Lillian Carter stood in front of the bedroom mirror, adjusting the delicate lace of her negligee. A woman of striking beauty. She had mastered the art of effortless allure, her auburn waves cascading over one shoulder. Her skin kissed by the soft glow of candlelight. Yet, despite the perfection reflected before her, an unspoken emptiness gnawed at her. Marriage to Ethan had been safe. Steady, too steady. They had built a life of quiet luxury. A home that exuded warmth and stability. Yet the fire that once burned between them had dwindled to embers. She traced a fingertip over her collarbone, recalling a time when Ethan's touch sent shivers racing down her spine. Now, his kisses were familiar, predictable, lacking the urgency that once left her breathless. He was a good man, loyal, loving, devoted, but devotion wasn't enough. Lillian craved something untamed, something that made her pulse race and her skin ignite with hunger. Sliding into bed beside her husband, she closed her eyes, longing for something more, something dangerous, something that would remind her she was still a woman, still desirable, still wanted, and that, she knew, was a dangerous thought to entertain. Lillian hadn't expected to meet him. The university campus buzzed with youthful energy, the scent of autumn crisp in the air as students lounged in patches of golden sunlight. She had told herself this was just a mother-daughter weekend, a chance to reconnect with Madison, to reminisce about her own college years over overpriced lattes. But then came Oliver, the kind of man who commanded attention without trying. Tall, broad-shouldered, his confidence was effortless, carved into the smirk that tugged at his lips. The way he held eye contact just a second too long. It started innocently enough, a lingering conversation at the coffee shop, a fleeting brush of hands as he reached past her for a napkin. But when Madison left to meet friends, the air between them shifted. The way Oliver looked at her wasn't casual, it was a slow, deliberate appraisal, the kind that stripped away years of polite restraint. And Lillian, for the first time in a long time, felt seen. That night, under dim, flickering streetlights, she found herself pressed against his dorm room door, breathless with anticipation. His fingers traced her jaw, tilting her face toward his. "You don't have to do this," he murmured. But she already had. Lillian had always considered herself a woman of control, a devoted wife, a caring mother, a pillar of grace and poise. But that illusion shattered the moment Oliver's lips met hers. It started as a whisper of a kiss, tentative, teasing, his breath warm against her skin as he lingered just long enough to give her a chance to turn away. But she didn't, she couldn't. The moment she surrendered, he deepened the kiss, claiming her with an urgency that made her head spin. His hands, firm and knowing, slid over the silk of her dress, fingers grazing the curve of her waist, igniting a fire she had forgotten still burned within her. Her body betrayed her, pressing against him, craving more, needing more. The thrill of recklessness sent a dizzying rush through her veins. She wasn't just kissing Oliver, she was unearthing a part of herself she had buried for years. Passion roared through her, untamed and unapologetic, drowning out the quiet voice of reason that warned her to stop. His hands tangled in her hair, his mouth tracing a slow, wicked path down her neck, making her shudder. "Tell me to stop," he whispered against her skin, his voice raw with restraint. Lillian's nails dug into his back, her breathing ragged as she whispered back, "Don't you dare." She didn't care about the consequences, didn't care about the life waiting for her beyond that door. In that moment, she wasn't a wife, wasn't a mother, she was simply a woman, starved for desire, and she was ready to devour every second of it. The weekend passed in a feverish blur of tangled sheets, whispered secrets, and stolen glances that burned hotter than the sun filtering through Oliver's dorm window. Lillian had never felt so alive. Every touch, every kiss was a rebellion against the monotony of her marriage, a reckless dive into something dangerous yet intoxicatingly real. Oliver wasn't just a lover, he was a reminder of the woman she had been before life became predictable. His hands worshipped her body in a way that made her forget she belonged to another man. His voice a mixture of heat and command as he coaxed moans from her lips, making her beg for more. In those moments, Lillian wasn't thinking about Ethan, wasn't picturing their home with its neatly folded linens and carefully arranged furniture. She was too lost in the way Oliver's mouth traced along her skin. How his body fit against hers like he had been made to ruin her. But as Sunday afternoon crept closer, reality clawed its way back in. She lay beside him, her fingers tracing the outline of his jaw, memorizing the way he looked in the golden afternoon light. This will end, she reminded herself. It had to. She had a life, a marriage, however dull, however distant, waiting for her. And yet, as Oliver pulled her close one last time, pressing a lingering kiss to her lips, a chilling thought settled in her mind. What if I don't want it to end? Lillian returned home, slipping through the front door like a thief in the night, the scent of Oliver's cologne still clinging to her skin. The house was quiet, too quiet, as if sensing the betrayal she carried within her. Ethan was in his office, hunched over his laptop, a familiar sight, always working, always occupied. He barely glanced up when she walked past, muttering a distracted, "Hey, you're back." She should have felt guilt, should have looked at her husband and remembered the years they had built together, the life they had shared, but all she could think about was the heat of Oliver's hands. The way he made her feel like a woman worth worshipping rather than a fixture of convenience. Later that night, lying beside Ethan in the same bed they had shared for over a decade, she stared at the ceiling, her body still thrumming with the aftershocks of forbidden pleasure. Ethan shifted beside her, reaching for her absently, a familiar pattern, his touch out of habit rather than desire. She turned to him, searching his face, looking for something, anything, that would tether her back to the life she was supposed to want. But there was nothing, just routine, just obligation. When his breathing evened out in sleep, she slipped from the bed, grabbed her phone, and stared at the message waiting for her. "Oliver. Can't stop thinking about you." Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. "And then," she replied. The affair became a rhythm, a secret melody woven into the fabric of Lillian's life. By day, she played the role of devoted wife, carefully treading through the predictability of her marriage, preparing Ethan's coffee just the way he liked it, nodding along to his work stories, pretending not to notice how distant they had become. But by night, in the stolen moments between reality and desire, she was something else entirely. Oliver consumed her thoughts. Their conversations were electric, pulsing with need and reckless temptation. Sometimes, it was innocent, flirty texts laced with teasing and anticipation. Other times, it was raw and unfiltered, his words painting images so vivid that she would shiver beneath the sheets, biting her lip to keep quiet while Ethan slept just inches away. The secrecy only made it more exhilarating, slipping out for an afternoon errand, only to find herself pressed against a hotel room door. Oliver's hands impatient as they explored the curves he claimed were made for him. The thrill of pulling her panties off in the backseat of his car. The windows fogged with heat, his voice a low, husky whisper against her ear. "Tell me how bad you want it." She knew she was playing with fire, knew that with every meeting, every lingering touch, she was getting closer to an edge she might never return from. But when she was with Oliver, nothing else mattered, not her marriage, not the risk, only the undeniable need that he awakened inside her. It started unraveling the night Ethan finally looked at her, not a passing glance. Not the distracted nod he usually gave, but a deep, searching look that sent a ripple of unease through her chest. Lillian was slipping, she could feel it. The cracks in her carefully constructed facade were starting to show, no matter how perfectly she played the role of the devoted wife. She had been careless, a stray text message, a lingering scent of unfamiliar cologne, the way she had started dressing differently, paying attention to details she hadn't cared about in years. Ethan wasn't stupid, and despite the years of complacency between them, he knew her well enough to notice the shift. "Where were you today?" he asked casually over dinner, his voice smooth but his gaze sharp. Lillian's hand tightened around her wineglass. "Just out running errands," she replied, forcing a small smile. Ethan hummed, taking a slow sip of his drink. "You seem different lately." A chill crawled down her spine. Does he know? She willed herself to stay calm. To maintain the illusion. I've just been trying to focus on myself more, she said lightly. Self-care and all that. He nodded, but something about the way he watched her sent a quiet warning through her veins. That night, as she lay in bed beside him, she felt the weight of his suspicion pressing down on her like a phantom touch. She had been careful, but was it enough? Lillian's illusion of control shattered the moment she saw Ethan standing in the doorway. His face cast in shadow. His eyes filled with something she couldn't quite place, disgust, betrayal, maybe even amusement, her breath caught in her throat, her fingers tightening around the phone she had just lifted from the bedside table. The message from Oliver still glowed on the screen. Last night was unforgettable. I need more. The silence stretched unbearably, thick with the weight of everything unspoken. How long? Ethan's voice was eerily calm. Too calm. Lillian swallowed hard, her pulse hammering against her ribs. Lying was useless now. He had seen enough. Maybe he had known for weeks. Watching, waiting for her to hang herself with her own recklessness. She opened her mouth, but no words came. What was there to say? That she hadn't meant for this to happen? That she still loved him? That she had been aching for something. Anything. To make her feel alive again? Ethan took a slow step forward, his gaze never leaving hers. You think I didn't notice? The late nights. The perfume you never wore for me. The way you checked your phone like it held your goddamn soul? A sharp breath left her lips. Ethan, I don't. His jaw tightened. You made your choice. And just like that, the floor beneath her world gave way. Ethan didn't yell, didn't rage. He simply turned, walking away, leaving her with the crushing weight of her own ruin. Lillian sat in the wreckage of her choices. The house feeling colder, emptier than it ever had before. Ethan was gone. His absence wasn't just physical, it was a void, an aching silence that settled in the walls, in the untouched space beside her in bed, in the quiet hum of a house that no longer felt like home. She had always feared discovery, but she had never considered the aftermath. The weight of guilt pressed heavy on her chest, suffocating. She had wanted passion, excitement, a reminder that she was still desirable, still alive, and yet, now, she felt nothing but hollow regret. Oliver's name flashed on her phone screen, a reminder of the chaos she had set into motion. She let it ring. What was the point? Ethan was the only man she had ever truly loved, and she had thrown him away for a fleeting thrill. With a deep breath, she stood, the cold floor beneath her feet grounding her in a cruel reality. There was no fixing this, no undoing the damage. For the first time in her life, she had to face the consequences. And this time, there was no one left to blame but herself. Infidelity is often a symptom, not just a mistake. It's the result of neglected emotions, unresolved frustrations, and a search for something that feels missing. In today's fast-paced world, where distractions are endless and temptations are easily accessible, relationships require conscious effort, honesty, and communication. If you feel disconnected from your partner, address it before looking elsewhere. If something is lacking, speak up rather than seek fulfillment in secrecy. Passion fades, but trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to rebuild. True love isn't just about excitement, it's about commitment, respect, and choosing each other every single day.